The Supreme Court just ruled in favor of the state of Tennessee's ban on gender affirming care for children and kids. Want you guys to keep in mind that when people talk about gender affirming care when it comes to kids, 90% of that is just allowing them to wear the clothes that they want and to act as the gender that they want to be. That is the lion's share of the gender affirming care. Whether or not you go to a therapist to talk about it, that's gender affirming care. In some rare cases, as they get into their teen years, some of them will be given puberty blockers, which is completely reversible. But in 25 states across the country, they are doing everything they can to take away parental rights, because many of these kids are doing this with the permission of their doctors and their parents. Which, by the way, isn't that the way it's supposed to be? You know, having a conversation about your child's health care is it should be between the child, the parent, and the doctor. But apparently, if you're a Republican, you are desperately trying to get the government into your goddamn life, government into your health care, government into your bedroom. What are you doing in there? The government wants to know. The government needs to make rules. The government is constantly trying to tell you what you can eat and what you can do and how you live and what you say and what you think. But yet the Democrats are the ones that are the authoritarian dictator types. Give me a fucking break. Anyway, let's take a look at this article in the AP. Supreme Court okays Tennessee's ban on gender affirming care for children, a setback for trans rights. Supreme Court on Wednesday upheld Tennessee's ban on gender affirming care for transgender minors, a jolting setback for transgender rights. The justices 6-3, obviously they went on party lines because we've turned the judiciary and the Supreme Court into bullshit propaganda and politicking. The 6-3 decision in the case from Tennessee effectively protects from legal challenges many efforts by President Donald Trump's Republican administration and state governments to roll back protections for transgender people. This is human rights. Transgender people are people. They deserve rights. But apparently, not according to the Supreme Court, this is a small enough marginalized group that they do not deserve rights. They're not real people. They're just dealing with a mental disorder. You know, what is your idea? Pray away the gay conversion therapy? That sounds like it's going to work really well. By the way, just on that one thought, let's say you're straight, and you know you're a straight man and you're attracted to women. But the government says, no, you should be attracted to a man, but you're not attracted to a man. Well, we have got a program now that is going to do a little brainwashing, and we are going to make you like the male form. But I don't like the male form. I like the female form. I'm a man. I'm attracted to women. Let me be attracted to women. No, we're the government. And we're here to tell you what you can and can't like, what you can be attracted to and what you can't. And we're telling you, Mr. Says you're hetero, you are attracted to other men and that's the way it's going to be. And if you don't like it, then we're going to take away your health care. How about that? Just imagine. Shoe on the other foot. Just imagine how you'd feel. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for a conservative majority that the law banning puberty blockers and hormone treatments for trans minors doesn't violate the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause, which requires the government to treat similarly situated people the same. I've said it before, I will say it again. Trans care is health care. If you had a kidney issue, if you had diabetes, if you had, arthritis, or you had, well, let's just say you had a hormonal imbalance, whatever the case, if you are dealing with something that needs medical treatment, you should be able to get that medical treatment. And in America, you got to pay for it. But even with this, they are saying you can't even pay for this shit. We're just not going to let you have it. Quote, the case carries with it a weight of fierce scientific and policy debates about the safety, efficacy, and propriety of medical treatments in an evolving field. The voices in these debates raise sincere concerns. The implications for all are profound. Saying a lot of words, not saying anything. The Equal Protection Clause does not resolve these disagreements, nor does it afford us license to decide them as we see best. Actually, it seems like it does. You seem to have decided what is best for trans people, and that is not getting the health treatment that they deserve. That is, possibly conversion therapy, or just ostracizing you so you can't get your health care. And I remember them talking about this, as regards to children. And now we have states like Texas and Florida who are now applying this kind of state law against adult transgender people. So even if you are an adult, you still are having your rights taken away from you. In a dissent for the court's 3 liberal justices that she summarized aloud in the courtroom, Sotomayor wrote, by retreating from meaningful judicial review exactly where it matters most, the court abandons transgender children and their families to political whims of the state that you're in. If you're in a blue Democratic state, they're not going to do this to you, at least not right now. They haven't done this nationwide yet. But if you happen to be in a red state, you are at the whims of the state laws that are constantly getting passed against your rights, whether you're gay or trans. You're having your rights stripped away from you. Now, if you're in a red state and you're having a hard time paying for groceries, or paying your medical bills, or paying your rents, or paying your car payment, because your work doesn't pay you enough and just money is stretched way too thin, they got nothing for you. They aren't trying to do anything to improve your life. But how about, instead of us helping you out, with money or better job or lower rent, how about we punish some trans people? Would that make you happy? And there is a large group of Republican people that are satisfied with that. I don't understand why you're satisfied with that. But there are a lot of people that live in red states that are not satisfied with that. The law also permits parents' decision-making ability for their children in healthcare, she wrote. Efforts to regulate transgender people's lives. The decision comes amid other federal and state efforts to regulate the lives of transgender people. It's not just children, including which sport competitions they can join, which bathrooms they can use. In April, Trump's administration sued Maine for not complying with the government's push to ban transgender athletes in girls' sports. This is the United States, and anytime you see red, that is complete restriction. Several Republican-led states have taken steps to bar access to gender-affirming care for transgender minors, which for people under 18 typically involves puberty blockers. It doesn't typically involve that. If you are under 18 and you're in your puberty years, then yes. But if you're a trans child at 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, your trans-affirming care is maybe talking to a therapist and dressing as the gender that you choose. That's your gender-affirming care. Think of it this way. J.D. Vance has a gender-affirming beard, because if he shaved it off, he would look like a grown version of a Cabbage Patch doll. So all of these red states, from Florida to Idaho, they all have complete restrictions. The orange is restrictions not in effect, so Montana is on their way to getting it done. Yellow says restrictions struck down by the court. That is, it looks like Arkansas. That has been restricted by the court, but with this new okay from the Supreme Court in the state of Tennessee, these red states are waiting for that particular decision by the Supreme Court so they can go further with their trans bans and their new laws. A lot of times these states, will have a contingent of lawyers shopping around for different courts, like the fifth district circuit court of appeals, that is one of the 13 districts that are just below the Supreme Court. They bring, like, the fifth district is very Republican. That's like Louisiana, Texas, Alabama, those guys, Oklahoma. They are very conservative, and red states will generally shop their lawsuits through them because they know it's a fast track to get to the Supreme Court. Even if they are ruled against, they can still appeal it to the Supreme Court. So a lot of states were waiting for this to happen so they can go forward with their lawsuits. And then the purple states, which look like there are a lot less purple states than there are red ones here, those are the ones that are protected. Republican president has also sought to block federal spending on gender-affirming medical care for those under 19. So you can be 18 and you can go to war and you can vote, but you can't have medical care if you're transgender. Instead, promoting talk therapy. Talk therapy. That's some gender conversion therapy. That's some gay conversion therapy. Talk therapy. Only to treat young transgender people. And the Supreme Court has allowed him to kick transgender service members out of the military, even as the court fight continues. The president signed another order to define the sexes as only male and female. And I think I mentioned in a previous story that I did last week that the suicide hotline, the 988 suicide hotline, they had a choice that you could, like, press a button, and because you're transgender, you could speak to somebody about your transgender issue. And they got rid of that part of the program. So the debate even spilled into Congress when Delaware elected Democrat Sarah McBride. She is the first transgender member of the House. Her election prompted immediate opposition among Republicans, including Nancy Mace, who went on a tirade wearing an A on her shirt and then screaming and yelling about having to share a bathroom with this woman. Man, I do not even want to think about Nancy Mace much in the bathroom, much less, be in that room with her. For God's sakes, man. The kind of evil that she is, man, I can imagine the kind of shit that comes out of her. No pun intended. Opposition among Republicans, including House Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana and Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina, of which bathroom McBride could use. And McBride even bent over backwards and was like, you just tell me what bathroom I can use and I'll just use that one, to protect the delicate sensibilities of Nancy Mace. Some providers have stopped treatment already. Several states where gender-affirming care remains in place have adopted laws or state executive orders seeking to protect it. But since Donald Trump's executive order, some providers have ceased some treatments. For instance, Penn Medicine in Philadelphia announced last month it would not provide surgeries for patients under 19. By the way, to have bottom surgery, you got to be 18 years old. It's always been that way. You cannot have bottom surgery unless you are an adult. So talking about kids going to school at 12 years old, going to school as a boy and coming home as a girl, it does not happen. It's bullshit. This is some fucking fever dream, a gay panic that people are going through right now, none of this stuff actually happens. The president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, Susan Cressley, said the organization is unwavering in its support of gender-affirming care and stands with pediatricians and families making healthcare decisions together and free from political interference. 5 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that LGBT people are protected by a landmark federal civil rights law that prohibits sex discrimination in the workplace. That decision is unaffected by Wednesday's ruling, but the justices declined to apply the same sort of analysis the court used in 2020 when they found sex plays an unmistakable role in employers' decisions to punish transgender people for traits and behavior they otherwise tolerate. Roberts joined that opinion, written by Justice Neil Gorsuch, who was part of Wednesday's majority. Justice Amy Coney Barrett also fully joined the majority, but wrote separately to emphasize that the law classifying people based on transgender status should not receive any special review by courts. Barrett, also writing for Justice Clarence Thomas, wrote that courts must give legislatures flexibility to make policy in this arena. So basically saying that states' rights to deny people health care. Let's see, a devastating loss or a landmark victory. This is Chase Strangeau, who is quite the transgender advocate for transgender rights. Chase Strangeau, the American Civil Liberties Union lawyer who argued the case for transgender minors and their families, calling the ruling a devastating loss for transgender people, our families, and everyone who cares about the Constitution. This is all, none of this stuff is good, folks. None of this stuff is good. And when you hear Republicans talking about freedoms, and then you see them doing stuff like this, taking away freedoms from people, whether it's your free speech, whether it's your rights over your body, whether you're a woman who needs an abortion care, or you're transgender and you need transgender medical care. They do not care. They just want to get involved in your life in any way they possibly can. And they are now employing the Supreme Court to go after marginalized groups. Need I remind you that one of the very first groups that the Nazis went after were the gays and the transgender folk that lived in Germany. They burned down their medical clinic and all of the medical records and scientific research that they had done. They burned that thing to the ground. That was one of the first groups they went after. Because why? Because they're very small. They don't have enough representation. They're marginalized, and they don't have a lot of people around them to defend them. And they're the easiest ones to cut out of the herd and then attack. And eventually it gets to a point where you go for larger and larger groups until eventually there is no one left to defend you, which is why you see people in the marginalized groups generally fighting for the rights of other people, because they understand, they're empathetic about having their rights stripped away, which is why back during the first gay rights movement at Stonewall, the largest voices and the strongest advocates for gay rights were transgender people. Miss Rivera was an amazing voice at that time. Meanwhile, a lot of the gay people kind of ostracized her, but it did not stop her from standing up against the police and all the people trying to take away gay rights. They were there fighting alongside gay people, trying to ensure that everybody got rights. And here we are today, going through another gay panic. Now it's trans panic. And who do we have out there that's ready to fight for us? I mean, thankfully, I did see quite a few people out at the protest, the No Kings protest. Hopefully some of those people will be advocates for people like me, a trans person who is just trying to live out her life in the only way that I know how. trying to live a comfortable existence, not bothering anybody and hoping that no one bothers me. But it is people like the Supreme Court, like the people that brought this case, the Skirmetti case, you know, these people, these red states, these legislatures who are too busy trying to take away my rights and your rights to actually do something that is beneficial to you. And we need to get to a point where we're all standing in solidarity. We need each other to protect against this, because if you think that they're going to stop after they take away our rights, you got another thing coming. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe. Keep rocking.